In 1986, Tom Hawks, a rugged 39-year-old father, and his two teenage sons found themselves at a local chili cook-off in Newport Beach, California. It was an ordinary day that would set the stage for something extraordinary. As Tom mingled with the crowd, his eyes were drawn to a stunning woman across the sea of people. He found himself staring at her, captivated by her beauty. She noticed, smiled, and quickly looked away. Mortified, Tom decided to go introduce himself. His confidence as a muscular man with a perfect mustache led him across the lawn where he met Jackie, a 29-year-old woman with a kind smile. They quickly hit it off, their conversation flowing effortlessly, and before long they fell madly in love. The years flew by, and by 1989 they were married in front of family and friends. Jackie, who had suffered a tragic motorcycle accident at 22, was unable to have children. But her love for Tom's two boys, who affectionately called her Mom, filled her heart with the joy of motherhood. Together they formed a family, one that radiated love, understanding, and warmth. As their boys grew into adulthood, Tom and Jackie found themselves faced with the empty nest syndrome in 2002. Their sons left for their own lives, and though it saddened them, the couple had a plan. They had spent years saving money with one dream in mind: retirement. They envisioned a life on the water on a yacht they could call home. With their savings, they bought a modest but beloved boat that they named the Well-Deserved. It wasn't glamorous, but to them it was everything they had worked for. For the next 2 years, Tom and Jackie sailed up and down the California coastline and even ventured into Mexican waters, savoring sunsets and catching fresh fish. They were living their dream free from the constraints of everyday life. In 2004, however, life threw them an unexpected curveball. Tom and Jackie's first grandchild was on the way. The couple decided it was time to settle down on land to be closer to their family. They sold the Well-Deserved, putting it up for sale in a fishing magazine. Within days, a young couple named Skylar and Jennifer DeLeon made an offer, excited to move on to the next chapter of their lives. Tom and Jackie eagerly prepared for the sale of their beloved boat. However, after the deal was made and the DeLeons took possession of the yacht, something went horribly wrong. Tom and Jackie stopped answering their phones. A few days passed and their sons began to grow concerned. Tom's brother Jim, a retired police chief, decided to take matters into his own hands. He drove to Newport Beach and went to check on the yacht, hoping to find the couple there. What he discovered shocked him. The boat was in disarray, with ropes hanging over the side tarps, removed from control panels, and dirty towels scattered about. Tom and Jackie, ever meticulous, would never have left the boat in such a state. Jim left a note for the DeLeons, hoping to find answers. Shortly after, he received a call from Jennifer. She confirmed that Tom and Jackie had sold them. The yacht handed over a suitcase full of cash and left, but that was the last she had seen of them. She was concerned, too, as they had disappeared without a trace. Desperate, Jim contacted Patricia, a friend of Tom and Jackie, who had been handling their finances while they lived on the yacht. Patricia confirmed that no large deposits had been made into their accounts. Something wasn't right. Jim reported them as missing to the police, and the investigation began. The police focused on the DeLeons. Skylar, it turned out, had a criminal past. He was a convicted felon who had been involved in an armed robbery. The police quickly became suspicious of him and his wife. When they interviewed Skylar, he admitted to using stolen drug money to purchase the yacht in an attempt to launder the money. His confession shocked the authorities, but they were willing to overlook his criminal activities as long as he continued cooperating. The investigation went nowhere for days. The police could find no trace of Tom and Jackie, but as time passed, the case began to take a darker turn. Skylar's story began to unravel. The night of the sale, he and his wife had seen Tom and Jackie drive off with the suitcase full of cash, but their behavior had been strange. Tom appeared anxious, almost paranoid, while Jackie seemed calm and collected. The details didn't add up, and the police were stumped. Then a break came from an unlikely source, a couple in Mexico who had spotted Tom and Jackie's SUV. The authorities quickly mobilized and rushed to the location. But what they found when they arrived was something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The truth behind the disappearance of Tom and Jackie Hawks would unravel in ways no one could have predicted. As the investigation deepened, dark secrets about the DeLeons, their past, and the final fate of the Hawks would come to light, and it would become clear that the couple's retirement dream had turned into a nightmare. But the full story of betrayal, of secrets kept hidden for too long, and of the lengths people will go to cover their tracks was yet to be revealed. What had truly happened to Tom and Jackie, and how deep did the DeLeons' involvement go? The answers would leave everyone horrified forever, altering the lives of those left behind. Dum dum. This is a condensed version to introduce the story, and expanding it to 15,000 words would involve diving deep into the characters' backstories, motivations, and psychological twists while layering in suspense and unexpected events leading up to the shocking climax. The investigation had hit a wall. Despite the initial burst of activity and the shocking confession from Skylar DeLeon, the authorities found themselves in the same place as Jim Hawks. Confused, frustrated, and increasingly worried. The DeLeons had acted suspiciously, but they hadn't directly implicated themselves in the disappearance of Tom and Jackie. There was a cloud of suspicion hanging over them, but no concrete evidence to suggest they had harmed the couple. Skylar had admitted to using stolen drug money to buy the yacht, but that in itself didn't explain why Tom and Jackie had vanished. Skylar and Jennifer, though technically suspects in the investigation, were not being charged with anything. Skylar's criminal history was known to the authorities, but they could not directly link him to any violence against the Hawks. The more the police dug into the DeLeons' past, the more the couple's backstory started to emerge, but not enough to pin them as guilty, a growing concern. Jim Hawks, however, was not one to sit idly by. The silence from Tom and Jackie was deafening, and the longer they remained missing, the more Jim was convinced something terrible had happened. He felt in his gut that they hadn't just disappeared voluntarily. Despite Skylar's claims, Tom and Jackie weren't the type to vanish without a word. They had built a life for themselves on the well-deserved one that revolved around their love for each other and their family. To think they would abandon everything, especially their sons, seemed impossible. Jim couldn't shake the feeling that the key to solving this mystery lay somewhere in the boat itself. He returned to Newport Beach, determined to uncover whatever secrets might be hidden there. He knew Tom, and he knew that his brother would never leave behind personal items in disarray. With his heart pounding, Jim walked up to the dock, his eyes scanning the well-deserved for any hint of what had happened. The boat had been meticulously maintained for years, but now it looked like it had been abandoned. The ropes and tarps were still in disarray, but Jim noticed something new. A series of strange marks on the wood deck, like scratches. They weren't deep, but they were out of place. Something had disturbed the surface, and that meant something or someone had been here recently. The dark secrets of the DeLeons. Back at the police station, the detectives were still puzzling over Skylar's confession. Skylar, while cooperative, had an odd, unsettling way about him. He seemed too eager to talk about his criminal past, almost as if he were trying to make himself seem less suspicious. His story of being a former child star was hard to believe. Everyone in town knew that the Power Rangers fame he claimed didn't exactly equate to the wealth needed to buy a yacht. The detectives began digging into Skylar's financials more thoroughly. They discovered that Skylar had come into contact with individuals who were involved in criminal organizations, some of whom were notorious for money laundering. Skylar's purchase of the yacht, paid in cash, was more than just a suspicious transaction. It was a calculated move to wash dirty money, a move that could have involved far more than just the yacht. Jennifer DeLeon, Skylar's wife, was just as enigmatic as her husband. She claimed she knew little of the family's criminal dealings, but when pressed by detectives, small inconsistencies began to emerge. She had been the one to make contact with Jim after Tom and Jackie went missing, but her responses were always vague. The more they spoke to Jennifer, the more it seemed as though she was hiding something. The trip to Mexico. As the investigation unfolded, more and more leads pointed to the couple's final destination, Mexico. According to Jennifer, Tom and Jackie had always dreamed of living near their son, who had recently relocated to a town near the Arizona border. Jackie, who had longed for the chance to be a mother again, had grown excited by the idea of becoming a grandmother. Mexico seemed like the perfect place to begin this new chapter in their lives. But there was something else, something that Jim couldn't ignore. He remembered an offhand comment Tom had made about a cousin they had in Mexico, a cousin who was reportedly involved in the local drug trade. Jim had never met this relative, and Tom had always been evasive about their connection. But the mention of Mexico suddenly took on a darker significance. Jim contacted the authorities in Mexico, once again providing them with the new information. He requested that they search the area near Arizona where Tom and Jackie were supposedly headed to see if there were any signs of the missing couple. The police in Mexico were hesitant as there had been no reports of any vehicles matching the description of Tom and Jackie's SUV, but Jim's persistence paid off. One evening, the call Jim had been waiting for came. Mexican authorities had spotted Tom and Jackie's SUV parked on a remote dirt road just outside a small village. The vehicle was abandoned with the keys still in the ignition, but there were no signs of Tom or Jackie. A new lead emerges. The investigation into the Hawks' disappearance took a chilling turn when Mexican police discovered something they hadn't expected. The SUV's trunk was full of personal items belonging to the couple. Clothes, toiletries, and even the pictures Tom and Jackie had kept on board the yacht. But there was something off about the items. They appeared to have been packed in a hurry, as if someone had just tossed them into the trunk without a care. Along with the personal belongings, the police found something far more disturbing, a blood-stained napkin carelessly thrown in the back seat. It was smeared with what appeared to be human blood. Jim's heart sank. This was the first real physical evidence that something violent had occurred. The blood could have been from a minor injury, but in the context of everything else, the strange behavior of Skylar and Jennifer, the oddities on the yacht, and the suspicious disappearance, it was clear that something sinister was at play. The search intensifies. The Mexican authorities intensified their search, combing through the surrounding area near where the SUV had been found. They found no trace of Tom or Jackie. The case was starting to feel like a hopeless puzzle with missing pieces that no one could find. Yet Jim couldn't stop. He wouldn't let go. One evening, Jim sat alone in his hotel room sifting through the photos of Tom and Jackie on his phone. He thought back to the day they sold the well-deserved, that moment when everything seemed to be going so well for them. They were going to be grandparents, starting a new life together free of worry. But now Jim could only think of the words his brother had said during one of their final conversations. If anything happens, don't trust anyone, not even family. At the time, Jim had thought it was just Tom being paranoid. Now he wasn't so sure. Suddenly a flash of insight struck him. He rushed to the hotel's front desk, asking for any local contacts that might help him. The pieces were finally starting to come together. The Hawks' disappearance was no accident. But who could Jim trust to help him unravel the truth? And would he be able to uncover what had truly happened to Tom and Jackie before it was too late? The next morning, Jim sat at the corner of a small, dingy cafe near the hotel, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. His thoughts were racing as the events of the past few days collided in his mind. Every detail, no matter how small, seemed to have a greater significance now. The blood-stained napkin in the SUV, the strange marks on the yacht, and most disturbingly, Tom's final warning. Don't trust anyone, not even family. Jim had always been a man of action, not one to sit idle, but the pieces of this puzzle were scattered and he couldn't yet make them fit together. He had one thing left to do. Confront Skylar, DeLeon. A dangerous game. Jim's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from one of his contacts in Mexico, an old friend who had been helping him with the investigation. The news was both terrifying and illuminating. There had been reports of a violent drug cartel operating near the small village where Tom and Jackie's SUV had been found. The cartel had been known to target outsiders, especially those who might have inadvertently crossed them. Jim's stomach churned at the thought, had Tom and Jackie been caught in something far darker than anyone had imagined. Jim immediately dialed the number he knew he'd been avoiding, Skylar DeLeon's number. Jim Hawks. Skylar's voice crackled through the line. I didn't think you'd call. Figured you'd just let the cops do their thing. Is something new coming up? Or are you just going to yell at me some more?